Member from Oak Bay, Gordon Head.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I have three personal stories I'd like to read in and see if I get the Minister's response. The first concerns a UBC professor I've been in touch with, who is most recently been teaching at the Okanagan campus in Kelowna. He's been there since 2013. They've had a home there since 2013, but they have a condo in Vancouver because his wife is teaching at Okanagan campus, but he's now teaching at UBC. So they're both UBC professors, but UBC has two campuses, one in Okanagan, one at UBC in Vancouver. So he teaches in Vancouver, she teaches in Okanagan. He was teaching in Okanagan. He was hit by the City of Vancouver's empty homes tax last year and has since moved his primary residence to Vancouver as part of it. So now his primary residence is Vancouver to avoid the Vancouver vacancy tax. And his wife is still teaching in UBC Okanagan. His wife spends much of her time in UBC Okanagan. So my question to the Minister is this. Can you confirm that this couple would be exempt because of the commuter marriage exemption that we're discussing when this fellow's wife spends a good deal of time in Kelowna for work purposes?
Minister.
Again, thank you, Honourable Chair, and through you to the member. And again, I'll always put the caveat around, based on the information that's here, I certainly encourage people to make sure they phone the tax department and talk to the tax department to get the specifics. But on the information that the member has provided, yes, it appears that if one is working in the other place and the one resident is the principal resident of the spouse, that yes, they would qualify.
Member.
Thank you. That's very helpful. This one's a little more complex. That was my understanding as well. I do appreciate hearing the confirmation, subject to the caveats, of course. That they're of course subject to the caveats. Another example is this one's very, very interesting. There's a couple that I know have been in touch with me. They own a house in North Saanich, which is in the covered regions of Capital Regional District. They live in the house on weekends. That's the only house that they own. It is in North Saanich. However, they both work in Vancouver, and they rent a property in Vancouver during the week, although they live in North Saanich. This is relatively common these days in Victoria, where people cannot afford to actually own in Vancouver, so they live in the North Saanich area. They take the ferry on Monday to North Vancouver. They work there, or to Vancouver, and they come back on the weekends, and they plan to live permanently there in North Saanich. So my question is, does this, is there an, is this, are they covered if, I mean, are they eligible to an exemption in this regard?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. And again, based on the information provided, it would appear that they would be subject to the tax because it wouldn't be their principal residence, that the home in North Saanich would not be their principal residence. It's not where they're spending most of their time. So it would appear it does appear that they would be subject to the tax. But again, you know, I want to make sure that I'm clear on the caveat that, you know, everybody has some additional information, and when people talk to the tax department, they often provide further information that a person wasn't sharing with an individual when they were talking to them. So I would encourage people to make sure that they phone for those kinds of examples to make sure that they get the information from the tax department.
Member.
Thank you. I very much appreciate that. I'm not, Honourable Chair, trying to trap the Minister at all. I'm trying to get some clarification and some advice that we can actually provide to these people who are rightfully concerned, and members of opposition have been doing exactly the same thing. We do understand, of course, that the Minister cannot provide tax advice. And it's a bit odd asking questions in this marriage section, but some of the people have asked us how marriage relates to this, because this is a complex tax bill, and where people fit in with their individual cases is quite difficult. The final example here is another woman, and again, she's not eligible to the she's not covered under the commuter marriage, I don't think. However, it's odd. So maybe we could get a kind of a general sense of the Minister's thinking on this issue. So this is an example of a woman who lives with her ailing mother in a family home in Surrey. So she lives in Surrey, her mother is ailing, she lives there with her. But the woman actually works in Vancouver. And she doesn't want to take the bridge along with the member from Surrey White Rock. I'm sorry, the tunnel with member from Surrey White Rock. So she has a condo in Vancouver where she works during the week. So she owns the condo, and she also lives in the family home that she owns with her mother in Surrey. So they're clearly not married, but there clearly is a kind of commuter relationship there. I'm wondering to whether she could be exempt if she rented the family home to her mother, or is there a temporary exemption for something like that? I don't know how this plays out.
Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair, and through you to the member with the caveat. I think that's really important to state. So if the individual works in Vancouver and has the Vancouver condo as her principal residence, for example, then her mother would be considered a non-arm's length tenant. She doesn't have to rent, she can live in the house, and she would not be paying the speculation tax. But again, lots of caveats around that to make sure that it's based on the principal residence, how much time she's spending between the two places as well.
Member from Oak Bay, Gordon Head.
Well, thank you. And again, I don't want to ask the Minister to give tax or advice on buying or selling property, but I do think it's important that we have this discussion and make it available to people to hear the kind of thinking of where things are going. And the reason why I say this is this particular person, also the condo that I mentioned in downtown Vancouver, is subject to a strata with a no rental clause in it. So it gets even more complex there. Unfortunately, this woman is selling her condo in downtown Vancouver. What I would like to get confirmed, Honourable Chair, is that in fact there is in place an exemption for 2018 and 2019 for any strata unit that has a no rental clause in place. So rash decisions about putting a condo on for sale when the condo is in a strata unit that has a no rental clause is not being forced by this legislation.
Minister.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Through to the member. The member is correct. There is a 2-year exemption for condos, stratas that have a requirement that you cannot rent the place out.
Member.
I just want to thank the Minister for this is very, very helpful, and I and the opposition for asking these questions. These are important issues, and having these answers on record is going to be very helpful. Thank you.